You have stumbled upon or perhaps intentionally ended up here at my podcast, Actual Leigh. No matter the path that led you here, I hope that you will hang out and join me for a truly enjoyable conversation. Let's get started. Hey everybody, welcome to Actual Leigh. We are here with Shelli from the Hacking Hypermobility podcast, which if you haven't checked it out, you definitely should. But we also met on TikTok and kind of like we're doing our sort of like discovery paths of different things, like having lemon bodies and uh just life things that happen when you start learning more about yourself. So we've finally gotten a chance to connect here and talk, and we've never actually talked, like we've messaged and stuff, but this is our first time doing the real-time talk. So like it's interesting because I've watched a lot of your videos, and so I know what you sound like, but it's totally, you know,
You forgot about our live we did when I had my black eye?
yeah.
That's I forgot about what we talked about that whole time. I think I tried crafts,
Probably.
and
It's
I don't
kind of
think I
coming back now.
I don't think I did a single craft while we talked. I just talked.
Where if I just I forgot about the black eye. That was like all I needed to be like, oh yeah, we did.
You
Honestly,
cosplayed me. It was hilarious. You because we had the same dress.
that's right. We like and so I did the makeup
Mhm.
and it looked super realistic.
It did. It actually looked better than my real one. My real
when the makeup's too real. The I tell you,
I
dude, like the whole era of like TikTok lives is like because of everything that's happened since then is so far buried down that I forgot.
I I was trying to figure out. I think you were one of my first TikTok mutuals. So I was trying to figure out who the OGs, because I don't really add people anymore because it's hard to keep up with people. And
Yeah.
I feel bad when I can't, which is ridiculous because it's social media. But that's just
Yeah.
something my brain does,
I
as you're
I
familiar
feel
with.
like that's like early like because we grew up at a time where the reciprocation was actually like a normal part of all of our interactions, unless it was like
Yeah.
at work or whatever. And so social media is a little, you know, it's just a little off from what we're wired for. But
Well, it took me a long time to realize Facebook messed it up by calling everybody friends.
yeah,
Do I need to get my ring light? Do you want me to put my ring light on?
that's totally up to you.
I mean, I
If you
kind of
want,
like the chiller vibe, but I don't know.
yeah, I don't have a ring light or anything set up,
I
so
just didn't know. I noticed I'm darker than you, and it's just because of the way I think it's the way I'm moving around, but I don't think it happened.
you look fine to me. I can see your facial
Okay.
expressions.
It's
That's all that
cute,
matters.
right? Yeah. Yeah,
And
that's
honestly, my last episode was with somebody who was sitting behind his like soundboard, and it was super dark, and he had the microphone in front of his face. So whatever you're happy with is
I
fine.
just actually am festive this year.
Yeah,
Um,
it's
I,
very and you did the framing so everybody can enjoy it.
yeah, because I don't normally. I have no idea what I'm going to do for next season. Anyway,
What's the next season?
the next season of the our podcast, we're like on break right
Oh,
now. I mean, I know what it's going to be. I have a bunch of stuff recorded, but I haven't even begun, like, it's all up here in my brain.
yep. So do you guys do you plan out like your topics, or how do
So,
you
okay, so this is where Luna planned the first two seasons, like wrote basically, I don't want to say 100% because I did some contributing things, but it might as well have been like 98.99%. She planned all of the episodes, everything except for the crossover episode, which is the interview with my family that Kennedy Krieger did. Um, so yeah, So she had all of the ideas, and it kind of followed a framework. Like the first season is kind of all like, hey, you got something going on? Like, let's go through the diagnostic process. How do you talk to your doctor? How do you make a plan? Like those things. And then we talked
Mm-hmm.
about our journeys with getting diagnosed with all the things. Um, and then season two is when we kind of started talking to groups of people that are more like marginalized groups of people. So we talked um, to an indigenous woman or indigenous human who is got all of the things, and a woman of color who is not even officially diagnosed and thinks she probably has Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, but they don't talk about it. So we went through and talked about all of those types, the people who are at a disadvantage already, like,
Mm-hmm.
and then you tack on having the invisible illness in this hellscape of a medical system,
Yeah.
and we actually, what's interesting too, and this was reflected in the reason why we decided to talk to men with with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome or some other connective tissue disorder, is because when I looked at our demographics of our audience, it's like 90% women, like 80% women, and about 10% who do identify as male.
Mm-hmm.
And that just showed me that there is a small community of men who are dealing with these issues, but you don't really see them talking about it in the way we have it framed, right?
Yeah.
And then we talked about kids having issues and not being believed, and just
Yeah.
what it's like to have a chronic illness yourself and then have a kid who is also chronically ill. And in some of, I'm a little bit past this, but in Luna's case, puberty.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so yeah, Luna planned it all out and wrote it. And then we went to the conference in July, which is, like I've said, the first time I've pulled out the mic since then. We came back from the conference with COVID, some of us, and then I had hip surgery. And then I had more surgery, and then I had more surgery after that.
Yeah. You've
Um,
basically been like, just as you're starting to kind of really recoup at the immune system level, you go into the next one.
yeah, I can't, you find out what's going on with one system, sort of get it fixed, and you're like, you know what? Let's mess with the something else now. So
Yep.
my neurology is a little better, but now I'm like, yeah, let's see what the orthopedics have in store.
Yeah.
But the third season, because I felt like we needed to do something, but Luna was like, I cannot, like, I, I want, brain says no.
Yeah.
And, she has other commitments that I don't have right now. She has a kid in the home, that she's got to look out for. She has a full-time job, and she's got also all of the things that I have going on too. So
Yeah.
I was like, you know what? I've got a lot of like ready-made content for people in our community, and it's going through surgeries you didn't know you were going to have. And so my physical therapist let me videotape most of my sessions just after my hip surgery with her. And we're doing my PT, and we're just talking about life. Like it's kind of just, we do the whole lived experience thing. So it's kind of just what's going on this week. And then we kind of just talk about stuff. So I'm going to use
Yeah.
snippets of that, plus tell some of my late diagnosis story more stretched out, and how it also, like, lessons I learned about myself that I see in my kids that allowed me to, I don't want to say parent differently. That allowed me to make different parenting choices.
Mm-hmm.
And I already can see different outcomes in
Mm-hmm.
relationships with my children. And so I think there's a lot of value in that. And so I want to share that with people
Yeah,
because
that's
a lot of people are getting those diagnoses now and they didn't have a kid that like they haven't already gone through. I'm a little further down the road, right? So they might have be my age, but their kids are only 10, 7. I started a little early. So,
yeah,
you know,
me
might as well.
too.
Hey, you know what though? But now everybody's like, yeah, and then you get to spend your 40s doing whatever. I was like, yeah, doing whatever, broken on my couch.
Yeah, I'm like I get to be sick. Awesome. But
Yay!
yeah, the whole I don't have like most of the diagnosis, even like the EDS is like a note in my record, but there's no like Stanford's like does not prioritize that. So I always have to go into every situation and communicate it. But looking back at even before I conceptualized that the autism may apply, because I was like I was taking like tests in like 2006 and 2007, and then both my son and I were like the the tests were like, maybe you could be on the spectrum, and I was like, it's just our personality, right? But
A funny
I
thing.
yeah, I just saw so much of myself in him that I
Hmm.
sort of intuitively approach things the way that I wish people had approached with me without even really cognitively being aware of the fact that I was doing it. And so like he ended up having it was just easier for him to navigate through like the school system because I would push back when the teachers didn't. He would do things to help him get through class. Like in order to stay interested, he did his homework during class, and the teachers
Hmm.
hated that. And I
Yeah.
was like, look, you have a choice. He's either going to do his homework during class and he's going to get straight A's because he's one of the top performing kids in the school, or he's not going to do the homework at all. And I'm going to support that because he's bored. So and then the teachers would
Yeah.
like back off a little bit. And I just was like, this is logical. And then later I looked back and I went, oh, I was basically giving him the accommodations that he needed,
Yeah.
and yeah,
I I would say, and I don't know, how old is your son? He's a little bit older than he's
he's 28 now.
28. Okay. So like about 5 years on my kid. Rob will be 23 on his next birthday, 6 years. Um, they had this, which I thought it was a ridiculous thing at the school where it was like this reading challenge, and you go to the library, and I don't like it because it puts a competitive edge on reading with the kids, which reading, as you know, is not something that kids should compete. Like it's like number of books read, and if you've read X books, you get this prize, and like they have all of these
Yeah, I
cheesy
won that. In
plastic.
sixth grade, I got a medal. But for me, it was like, even though I hear what you're saying, like for me, because reading was it was like the only thing I ever did right in school was that I won that, right?
Oh, don't get me wrong. I think it's awesome to encourage the reading. Here's where it gets annoying. You had to get the points for reading the book. It had to be in this database of books.
Oh,
Uh,
so it was like certain books, not just any
so
books.
correct. And I don't think it was necessarily like they're prioritizing books or trying to push you a certain way. But when you think about a kid like my son, what does he like to read? That kid reads nonfiction, reads encyclopedias, reads almanacs. The books that because the whole premise was you read this like grade level appropriate book or for whatever grade level you're on, and then take a quiz after. Well, there's not going to be a preloaded quiz about, I don't know,
Yeah,
whatever topic that he was choosing to read about that day. So,
that would not have worked for me either because I read sixth grade, read Great Expectations was one of the like 40 books I read.
right. So I
Yeah.
had to go into so he was going to the media center like they would do, and he was finding things to read and then never taking quizzes, or he would find some other like see what quiz so and so was taking, and then like just take that and like fail all these. Like it wasn't work. They were like, what's going on here? And so then I was
Hmm.
like, well, these are the books he likes to read. And they were like, well, these they get just were kind of arguing with me about like, well, have him read these books. And I'm like, he doesn't want to read those books.
Yeah, why would he? That's ew. That's a
It,
good way to burn somebody out, like make
that's
them
it.
hate
Yeah.
reading.
It's kind of like it's when people are like, graphic novels aren't reading. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Comic books aren't reading. Yes, yes, they are. It's a form of reading. Like anything
Yep.
that promotes literacy and tells a story and makes you.
And it fires the brain up in the same way. People have done fMRIs of it, so
Mhm. Actually, and I even found I comprehend better now that I know this about myself, audiobook and reading at the same time. Or even just
interesting.
I've always liked captions, but I never knew why. And I think it's just the double, the visual plus the auditory, I think just
Yeah.
I guess, I don't know.
Yeah, the captions
Anyway,
have always helped me.
yeah, but I had to go like have this chat with the principal and be like, please stop. And because Rob wanted to do well and wanted to get his 25, because their whole thing was like, strive for 25, everybody get 25 books.
Hmm.
And so when he was in fifth grade, by that time, he's reading like, I don't know, he probably had already mastered meteorology by then. I don't know. He like went in on that last day the very last day to do it. He had to read, I don't know, 5 books and like picked kindergarten fast books that he could flip through real fast that he knew he could pass the little quiz on to get the at least 80% to get the credit so that they could have 100%. I swear it probably was some kickback scheme with some company. Like if you get X% of reading, then we're going to give this. It just,
Yeah,
but like that's the kind of thing that is a kid like mine, that turned my kid off to reading.
right.
Or the people who give kids a hard time about the screens. Did you look and see what was on the screen? Because I did. I used to give my kid a hard time about the screen. And then one day I looked at it and he was reading, I don't know, some peer-reviewed paper on hurricane. I was like, okay, never mind.
Yeah, my son was growing up when screens weren't really and
Just
I mean,
before. Yeah, yep.
yeah. And so he had a gaming computer that we kept in the front room. So, but he was just online gaming and it was really funny because he would be like playing with people and they would say something really rude, like say something super sexist and he would correct them. And I'm like, you know,
Yeah.
but yeah, we just always had really open conversations about stuff. So like some of the topics that people are worried about their kids going and learning about and being exposed to the wrong things, he would talk to me about them. And
Hmm.
so it wasn't, he had like the language and sort of the understanding to be able to go out and like navigate stuff on the internet, in a way that other kids didn't. And
Right.
yeah, and we
So
watched Penn and Teller's Bullshit when he was like a tween, right? And I love that show because they go and they debunk stuff, they're funny, and they have non-sexualized nudity, which I think is like pretty important, especially when you're dealing with like this visual landscape of the internet, which is just so much objectification, right? It's so,
we, when Rob got a certain age, we were like, hey, you're gonna see stuff on the internet. That's not what that's not what all sex is like. That's not
mhm.
what, a lot of that is acting, and it's not gonna
Yeah,
be like that every time. You might, like just mind, keep it open, keep that in mind when you're consuming that content of like what you're
yeah.
actually seeing.
Yeah, I was like, get to know your body before you start utilizing external influences. And then I explained to him like the way that women are raised, sort of like disconnected from their sexuality, where they're kind of taught to cater to men and stuff.
Exactly.
And was like, so, when you go into being sexual, take the time to get to know their body as well. And so as he got older, we started having conversations about his experiences. It was kind of interesting because he was teaching them how to function sexually because they were emulating what they saw in porn, not,
Right.
I was
Not what
like,
was actually natural to them. Yeah.
yeah. And I was like, I did good without really realizing that was going to be the result, but sweet.
I kind of the same way, like how you were saying you always were just treated him and just anybody really the way you would expect and the way you'd want to be treated. I always people are like, why are your kids so XYZ with you? Because I treat them like humans. I never treated them like
Right?
little projections of me that had to do
Exactly.
my bidding, and then one day they magically become an adult. Because how
Right.
will they know to trust what their opinions are, what their ideas are, if they're never allowed to bounce them off?
Right.
If you're
Yeah, it's
never
like
allowed to have an opinion when you're a child, like, how do I know when it's okay to have an opinion?
all right. Yeah, that was when the baby phase was not, it was fine, but when I got excited is when he started arguing with me about birds. Like, he was like 4 and we had
Rob
our
got me
first
into
like
birds. The reason why
he
I'm a
was
bird
like
lover.
crows aren't birds. Crows aren't birds. Like he was on this thing. So we were like, all right, we're going to the library. Like,
Let's learn
but
about birds.
yeah, but I've always it's
I was
really
not a
always been he's
kid
a
though.
person. He's a person, and I like people who parent where like their whole identity is being a parent, and so they sort of dehumanize their children in this way. I'm like, my brain don't do it. It's just
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I mean, if that's, I don't begrudge anybody who I for a while I felt like I identified myself as a mom, like as only a mom. Like I'm
hmm
especially right after Rob got diagnosed. I was like, "Oh," but it wasn't like in the autism mom vein, like the way the
yeah,
stereotypical. It was more like, "Hey, this is like the same, but it's different." And I think people need to
hmm
know about it. But even as I was like sharing some of that, I was like, this is his story, not mine. And so
yeah,
after I still have all of that writing, I just took it all down publicly. It's all in draft form. And he and I just talked about going through it together and like
yeah,
publishing, like talking about like how I was feeling and if he remembers it. And I think that would be kind of cool. But yeah,
yeah.
like you don't, you're Leigh. You're not,
Yeah, I mean, I was a mom too, but that was just like one part of
that's
it, and
one thing.
it was
Yeah.
like I didn't rely on him to
Give
bolster
you
my
purpose.
sense of self. Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, but I have you ever had conversations with them about things that happened when they were small before you understood these things about yourself, like having emotional dysregulation or where you would get really overstimulated and like I have a lot of guilt for things like he wanted to be on me all the time, like just constantly wanted to like be like
Oh, you were like,
roughhousing
and you were touched. You were like, I'm touched out. Get away from me.
and I would be like, not right now. Like I tried to be very calm about it, but even that you could see that he would feel like rejected.
Rejected.
And then I'd feel so bad. And like we had conversations as when he became older about it. And I was like, well, I was just really overstimulated. And it was really hard for me. And I still feel guilty. I still remember like these moments where I wish I could have been, but it was too much. And, it was at the same time, he also had to kind of learn those boundaries. But he was like, yeah, as I got older, I started also experiencing the overstimulation. And so then I looked back and realized that's probably what you were experiencing. He's like, so it did hurt my feelings at the time, but then as I got older, it was like, and it was really nice to kind of have that mutual understanding of this sort of this experience that
I think the only, yeah, I think the only time that, oh my God, I had the answer to the question and oh, okay, feeling bad about, yes, we've talked about those things. There is one time I remember I slapped Rob and it was so fast. Like it was, I didn't hit, oh my, in a minute, I have to turn the camera and show you Alice because she just moved and she looks ridiculous. Um, she's giving me the eye right now. Okay, never mind. It's done now. Now we're
That's okay. We got your face instead.
yeah, she's turned her head away from me. She heard me talking about her and was like, nope, no, she's not happy.
Anyways.
Anyway, I'm all over the place. I'm sorry. It's late for me. This is Sleepy Shelli. Sleepy Shelli gets giddy and forgets what she's talking about. Anyway, no, but I slapped him. And I see Bravo.
It's Amos.
Oh, that's Amos? Why is it looks
Yeah.
really dark? His
It's just
tail
his
is so
tail.
dark.
Yeah.
I guess just without seeing the rest of him, it's oh, okay. Hi, Amos. You got anything to say?
He just looks mad.
He does look mad.
He hates being held. Like, it's the
That's
worst ragdoll ever.
Alice is like I hold Alice and she's like,
He's like, he won't look at me or anything. He's just like he's
Alice is she's just more like, put me down. And
hmm
Dinah, she lets Alec hold him like she's like if that cat would cooperate and get into a purse, she would be a great little purse cat. But anyway, but Rob remember anyway, let's dial back to 5 stories ago. Rob remembered me slapping him, but he also remembered me immediately turning around and bawling my eyes out.
Yeah.
And then he said, Mom, I also remember that I had been a big jerk. He's like, and I didn't say that then. He's like, I remember that now. And I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm like, well, you're bad at emotional regulation. Well, you were. You were actively working on it.
hmm
Obviously, I was bad at it and had like no real thought I was good at it. Clearly, I wasn't. So we're working on it. I
Yeah.
don't think I think that was really the last time I ever like only time that I've like laid hands on him like that where it was like where it wasn't like a quick safety like
Yeah.
don't go in
Yeah.
the street type. Um
It's like the I never physically reprimanded Breen except for once when he ran. He thought I kept telling him not to run in the street, and he
why is
decided
it
to
always
challenge.
running in the street?
And he was like, "Oh, I'm going to be funny. I'm going to run in the street." And I was just like, "Swat!" Not hard enough to hurt him, but enough for him to be like, "That was different." And
Yeah,
I,
like
but there were a few times where I like verbally snapped. I didn't say anything like abusive, but I was just like, and I'm very because I grew up in an environment with a lot of emotional dysregulation and violence. I'm very sensitive. Like when I watch like sitcoms where they're kind of making fun of each other or being like snappy, I get upset because it's too mean because I like went the opposite, right? So I'll be
yeah.
like, ugh. But and then I would just feel like really bad afterwards, but I would recognize that I had to hold the boundary with them. So I would like hold that boundary and then once everything was calm, come back and have a sit down conversation and kind of discuss what happened and kind of get his side of it and stuff like that. But it he's much calmer. Like I don't know if he's got like a pool of rage in him somewhere, but I've never seen him like lose his shit. He just like when I was younger, I put holes in walls. I was very expressive. And I think he
Yeah.
more internalizes it like I do now. So like I feel like I shred myself up like there's a blender in there and I have a feeling that that's more kind of where he puts it. Like he never went through the expressive phase.
The angry punching walls phase.
Yeah.
Rob would get some anger. Very much like me. Alec calls it our 5 minutes of anger. It's like the initial like "Rrr," like we Hulk out. It's like "Rrr."
hmm
And then like once we like, well, now that I know I need to like feel that, before I would just be like,
Yeah.
fine. And then, drink 10 beers. Or anyway, but yeah, now that I like let it pass through me, I can come back. I mean, I always would take responsibility for my behavior. Um, but I would still behave badly sometimes. I'm
Yeah.
behaving My behavior is better when it comes to managing negative emotions. Because
Yeah.
before I would either not let them, stuff them down in, um, or it would just be this like big blowout where, I know now it takes time for me to process things. And
Hmm.
so now that I know, oh, let me get some processing time in there so that I actually respond appropriately, because then what would happen is I would process it, whatever happened, and then be like, oh no, now I have to go deal with that.
Yeah.
Depending on who or how important that was, sometimes
It's not worth it. Just save yourself the energy expense. Yeah, I kind of am
and
at that point now
embarrassing.
too. Like I just don't, I used to, that or I would go, I used to exercise a lot when I was younger, because I couldn't filter. So if something annoyed me or overwhelms me or pissed me off or whatever, there was no filter. I would just say exactly what, right? Whatever it was. And so I started learning, since other people don't respond well to honesty, I would be like, I'm gonna go to the gym or I'm gonna go ride my motorcycle or and that was kind of and when I was forced to sit still because of my health stuff, I went through about a year of feeling, I was like, I was in a hurricane of emotions
Ooh.
and was like, and I went to my therapist and I was like, I think I need help. Like, I think I need to go into like a, groupie sock place because something is wrong. And she was like, I think you're just sitting still enough that you're feeling your feelings for the first time. And I was like, she's like, just try to feel them. And there was a lot of just crying and uncomfortableness, but eventually I started being able to apply labels to the different emotions. And now it's like, I'll be like, oh, I'm feeling this feeling. And,
Were you also flabbergasted that like feelings were like things you felt in your body?
yeah, I never like, I didn't, and I don't think I ever got that input, you know? It was like,
So it's
yeah,
but when you're nervous, or sometimes you have to pee when you're like, or just the different things, or oh, I just get hot, so hot. Why am I so hot? Shelly, you're mad. What?
yeah. Yeah, I didn't
Air conditioning.
I I still don't it takes me to like I'll have an experience and then later be like, "Oh, like I need that processing time like you mentioned to kind of understand
Yeah.
like what's going on." But also I don't feel emotions all the time and apparently most people do. And I don't. Like there's I somebody asked me how I feel and I'll be like, I can feel the chair pushing its my leg through my pants. Is that what you mean? Like, and I won't
Yeah, what
actually.
do they mean by that? Like, I
People,
struggle with that question also.
yeah, people
But also, I
feel
can't answer what's your favorite song.
me either. Yeah, I don't have one of those. I know I hate favorites. They stress
I'm
me
like,
out.
well, what mood am I in?
Right?
Who am I
Exactly.
with? What
Yeah.
what season is it? What time of day
Also,
is it?
also, like, if I did have a favorite, the moment you asked, my brain would be like, huh? Like I cannot access that information when I need
No.
it. Like but yeah, I'm terrible. Like people are like, "Oh, what's your favorite food?" And I'm like, "Well, it depends on how my stomach's feeling or the temperature or like
Yeah.
yeah, you know." But yeah, I don't people if you ask them how they feel, they'll say like they're feeling happy or relaxed or they have like emotional inputs that like I
Oh, I
don't
thought you
have
were just supposed to say fine and then keep walking.
yeah.
Or no, that's how's your day?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll say I don't
I
know.
get stressed out.
I don't answer questions the way I'm supposed to, apparently.
I've stopped answering them. Like I will occasionally meet people and we will start messaging and I think they want to connect with me as a friend
Yeah.
or something. And their way of doing it is to text me the same thing every morning and at night, like, good morning, I hope you have a good day, or like, or I did you have fun today? And it's like every single day. And I get increasingly more and more stressed out because I don't understand the need for the labels or any of that. Like I'm like, it makes me feel like if I have an honest answer that it's going to be wrong, and I'm tired of having
Right,
that
because if
conversation.
well then and if it's a new person also, did you have fun today? No. Why didn't you have fun? Okay, well, my
Well, they
management
don't,
company again, like
yeah. Well, they don't even ask why. They go, oh, I'm sorry. And then I'm like, all right, I blocked you. I'm done. I can't.
I'm sorry.
It feel bad. I don't, I've never had anyone be like, oh, why didn't like they never ask why. They always just say, I'm sorry. And I'm like, about what? Like, it feels
Really,
so performative. It stresses me out and I can't. So I've just decided that they can do whatever they want and they can go find people who talk like they do. And I'm not going to keep them around. I'm going to have the people in my life that talk the way that I'm comfortable with, which a lot of times isn't even the same way as me, but is still
yeah.
comprehensible, you know? Like it feels present in some way or real, you know?
I'm glad you brought that up because I just saw a comment on something that I'm a part of, and it was kind of like it wasn't a negative comment. I took it negatively, but I'm sitting on it. I'm gonna process it overnight. I'm not gonna
Mhm.
because my initial thing was like, oh yeah, well,
Oh my God, I get, yeah.
but I've learned.
Yep.
I've learned.
What was the comment?
So it was just kind of it was on one of our podcast episodes about it was on our why get diagnosed episode, which was two parts. And actually that was the last thing we recorded. So we were very burned out at that point in time. But it basically was like, oh, I was what you guys sound glum. I was hoping for a more positive, like
What? It's
patient advocate. Like I don't know. It's a public comment on the I think
yeah.
so. But I mean I'm glad that they listened, and I hope they had kind of alluded that they weren't going to listen to part two. I hope if you somehow are listening to this that you do listen to part two. I think it did have kind of a darker tone in that
I think
episode.
that just it's just
But
sort of
we
the nature of the topic, but also not everything is a happy story. It's one of my complaints with American media in general is there's this like fixation on having everything very neatly wrapped up with a and it's not as realistic. And I
like
don't,
a nice rom-com ending, you know. That
yeah, and I I had a question,
yeah,
kind of sub like
like
changing,
related-ish. Like
yeah, like about about having the diagnoses, like going into your healthcare, getting the surgeries, and sort of like and sort of figure out what's going on with your body, like having the EDS diagnosis and having the autism diagnosis. Do you feel like it helps the conversation with your doctors?
I'm glad you mentioned that. Yes and no. For exactly the reasons you might think if you're yes, because they understand why I ask so many questions, why I'm already so well informed, why I'm I've got all of these concerns, why I'm like steps ahead of them, why, all of those things,
Hmm.
while at the same time also like treating me like a child sometimes.
I was wondering about that.
But
Because I
go ahead.
I was just gonna say because I feel like if I could just say to my doctors, I'm autistic, and so I'm gonna communicate more thoroughly because I'm
Yeah.
not good at relying on assumptions. Like I feel like that would be helpful, but then are they gonna like think I'm dumber in some way or unable to understand them in some way that they'll treat me differently as
That
well,
they'll
you
like
know?
immediately change. Um, I haven't had that's like a whole like that's like you can make a whole episode about just that, probably.
Add it to the list.
That is right. But that is actually something that because just recently during this is a good time to tell this story. On the surgery I just had on my left hand, so that was just last Thursday. I had brought my own compression grippy socks because the ones they give you at the hospital don't go up all the way and they don't actually stay up on my little chicken legs. Well,
They
I have a
hurt
little,
the bottom of my feet too.
yeah, they're not great.
Yeah.
They don't have the right compression for me. I don't like them. I have my own that are nice. I had worn a pair of my own when I had gotten my right hand done. They were like, "Oh, those are cute." I'm like, "Yeah," and saves you the plastic from wrapping it, the laundry, like just all of the reasons why having my own pair of socks is good. And
I'm
it's
pretty
like,
sure they throw them away after,
yeah,
which
it
is
was
another like, yeah.
so wasteful. They made me take another pregnancy test too. I was like, I was just here last weekend, not pregnant. And I was like starting to argue, like I was like, for all of the like, I mean, there's so many reasons why I would not be pregnant. Like, but um
They gave me the choice to either sign a paper waiving the test or do the test. I've had a hysterectomy,
they
but they
still
still, it's so,
that is stupid.
yeah,
Like
I'm just
actually
like,
not having the oven
right?
fun.
The statistical chances, why I'm not sexually active, but if I was, the statistical chances with me having ovaries of there being a pregnancy inside there anywhere is very low, and it would not be viable anyways, so that it doesn't matter what drugs they give me.
Right.
So, yeah,
But the guy was like, Alec had stayed back. It was a whole thing. And I was like, fine. So like I did the P test and I was like, whatever. It's just another thing you're gonna bill me for. Like, fine.
right.
So then we started having a conversation about the socks. And he was like, well, I wasn't here last week. I'm gonna have to check. And I was like, okay. And so then I changed. I kept my socks on still because I was waiting because I wasn't gonna go through the process of changing the socks.
Right.
I had this hand, I can do stuff with this hand, but it's not, I still don't have 100% hand, whatever.
Yeah.
And Alec was still waiting and the wait, he hadn't come back to my room yet or my little curtained area. And so he left to go do something. When the nurse came back, it was a dude. He was like, "Oh, you're gonna put those socks on?" And I was like, "I'm have you asked?" And he's like, "Well, no, I'll check." And I was like, "Okay." He's like, "I told you I would check." And I was like, "Okay." And so then
But what?
he was almost like looking, like waiting for me to put on the socks. And it was almost like he was like, "Well, I'll check in a minute." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." And he's like, "Well, if you don't want the procedure, you don't have to be here." Like it was kind of like, and I think we had had a few other work, like it wasn't immediate, but we got to that point, and I was like, "What is happening right now?" I was like, "Can you please go get my husband? Like, just go get my husband." I was like, "I'm
Right.
autistic. We're clearly having a problem here." And so went out, got my husband. Alec comes in. Oh my God, his face, he looked like he was ready to fight somebody. Because like, so he comes in, he's like, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" And I was like, "I just need him to know. I'm not rushing him to get to find out about the socks, but I'm not taking these socks off until I know. That's what I wanted him to know. He didn't let me finish what I was saying. That's all I want to say. Like,
Right.
that's all it was. But he was so like hell bent on, I think he thought I was judging him for not, all I was trying to do is just get information. And I think that's
Right.
the biggest issue is I'm not out to do, I am a nosy bitch. If I can see it, hear it, smell it, touch it, if it's a rat, if I am aware of it, I want to know about it. Everything on television should be pop-up video. I want to know the information.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, I'm the same way, and I try to like kind of give a little disclaimer, like if I can feel the questions coming, like sometimes you just the questions are coming, and I'll be like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask a lot of questions because I am authentically curious and interested. You're not comfortable, that's okay. Just tell me I'm not, you know. But even so, like I have a friend that we message a lot, but I have a kitty here. We're kitty
Yeah.
people. But
I know.
and he's autistic, diagnosed autistic and
Oh,
stuff,
she's stuck
and
horrible.
and I'll like does she claw you?
Not intentionally. That was I didn't plan that well.
Um, but I'll like he'll like say something and there's like a context that he has that I'm not having, and I'll be like, okay, and a bunch of questions, and even he'll be like, whoa, and I'm like, sorry, I just need the context so that I can understand what you just said because I want to understand what you just said. Like,
Right.
you know yeah, I haven't gotten in trouble before my procedures, which is good because I've never had anyone go with me before. Like
Yeah.
whenever you post and I see like that your husband's there, I'm like, that must be really neat because I've been in the hospital and never had anybody visit me. I just it's always very
If you weren't so
lonely.
far away, I would try.
Yeah.
I want like that makes me sad. Like I know I wish everybody had an Alec.
Yeah, I've gone with other people and sat with them in the ER, and I
Yeah.
had a friend that was going through the cancer stuff with the BRCA2 gene, and I would go to her
Oh,
appointments with her, and just yeah. And then when she had her baby before the cancer stuff, I was there to take pictures right away. So I got like these amazing newborn
well,
photos of
you
her
take
with.
great pictures. So
So, oh, thank you. I miss that about I want to do it again. But yeah, the one of my last procedures, oh, it was for my hysterectomy actually. The lady, my nurse that I had during the preparation was like this grandma lady, and she loved cats. She saw my cat tattoo, and that was it. She started giving me hugs all the time. And all the nurses were like, what is we just had like sometimes just
fun.
you connect, right? And
Mhm.
I was totally like normally I'm like, ew, hugs, but the way she did it was totally fine, and
There's my friend Lori. I'm not a big hugger, but like I actually saw her today. I think I gave her 3 hugs.
yeah, there's some people that just like vibe the right way and it doesn't feel doesn't feel wrong.
When I first met Lori, I was like, what drugs is this woman on? How no one is that happy all the time.
I know a Lori like that.
She was very over, like I was like, whoa. But now she's one of, but now she's one of my most favoriteest people. Like seriously.
Yeah.
And I think it's just now that I stand like the way my brain is. Because there would be
Yeah.
people that I would genuinely want to be around, but like I would be like, I can't. Like, and I didn't know it was a sensory thing. Like I didn't know
Right.
I would spend time with them and then I would just be like, oh, but like that's because like I had also like spent the whole day at work and like had done this and then I would go see this person. So now like I know
Yeah.
if I see Lori, then I would need a lot of downtime between. But I also
Yeah.
like today, so like I knew there was gonna have a lot of downtime before I'd have to like talk and be social again.
Right.
But
Yeah. The Lori, she was like she's I haven't talked to her in a while. She got married and everything got very busy for her, but literally just so like like in animes you have the like the very like she's like that, but it's she's just like that. And at first, I just thought she was just faking it. And I was like super sus. But she was like
Yeah.
really wanted to hang out. And so I did. And then over time, she just stayed that person. And
Yeah.
she
That's
has other
hard.
emotions.
Yeah.
She just has this, and she's never had any back pain or body pain before. Like I told her my back hurt all the time. She's like, my back's never hurt before. And I was like, are you
I'm so,
human?
what does that
Yeah.
even,
What? Like what?
does she have a back?
Right.
Is
Like
this a
I just,
human person?
yeah, exactly. So I was like, maybe that's why you're so happy. Like, I'm like, my back hurt so much when I was 8 years old. I used to sit in the backyard pulling weeds from the garden and cry while my back hurt. Like I can't even fathom. Like, it was amazing to me. I'm so happy for her that she has that
That's
experience
amazing.
though.
No, my friend Lori has had pain, has survived cancer, a couple surgeries. She's a fighter.
Yeah. That's some shit.
Yeah.
But cancer's rude. I'm like I
I
not
have
to be
so
like
many friends right now dealing with that shit.
yeah, we're like in that age group unfortunately, and then the numbers are shifting where it's becoming more common in younger people and
Well,
but
especially
yeah.
like, especially us Gen Xers, the boomers and the Gen Xers before like a lot of the environmental regulations really,
Yeah.
some of them.
Yeah.
Even with the regulations, like I worked at Superfund sites when I worked for the government. So even though, I was still around all of that stuff, just because you're like regulated doesn't mean you're at a safe place. Yeah.
Right. And then there's so many things that they don't regulate till they know there's a problem anyway, because they can't get the money to really look into it. And so and they'll be like, "Oh, it's fine. We haven't found any problems." And then later, "Oh, there's problems." So yeah,
Yeah.
it's can't
Well,
trust
and we're not,
anything.
yeah, and we're not very good at learning from what other people do in other
Right.
countries with what they study and ban and
Yeah. I'm
how
assuming you
they
do
give
the
health
same thing.
insurance and vacation time.
Maternity leaves and oh yeah, vacation. What? Yeah.
Vacation.
Um, I always read like I'll go on NIH and look at like Medscape and stuff, and I'll read stuff, and then I go, I wonder what the equivalent studies look like. And I go look in other countries and see what their findings are. And so, like,
Yeah.
when I started learning about my gallbladder, which by the way, there's like a whole area of like, they think that like the dysfunctional gallbladders and EDS can be a EDS thing.
Uh-huh. I was going
So,
to talk to you about that because both my aunt and my cousin have had their gallbladder out. And for a while, some of my pain, because I get random ab attacks, I thought maybe it was my gallbladder too. But I haven't had any issues in a long
that's
time.
good. I
But
went when when
I
I
was gonna mention that to you because I know yours
yeah.
getting evicted next month.
Yeah,
So
mine is like if you look at the scans are all perfectly like normal, but and so for years I was having symptoms and I suspect my initial GI symptoms in 2013 that put me on the liquid diet. I really suspect that was my gallbladder. But and because every time I went to the ER when I had an attack, they would be like, "It really sounds like your gallbladder," but the scans were normal and I don't have stones. I've always eaten really healthy,
they're
so
obsessed with finding stones. If you don't
yeah,
make stones, then they're like, whatever, it's fine.
the bias is just my I can't I'm like it's so unscientific the way that they think about the gallbladder. Like the only issue that they're really familiar with besides gallbladder cancer is gallstones, right? And
Mhm.
gallstones are caused by a variety of things, but usually it's lifestyle choices that kind of build into it. But they they if you have any of the other types of issues that can come with the gallbladder, like having a hypokinetic gallbladder or hyperkinetic gallbladder, they want the symptoms to be the same as when you have gallstones, which is illogical because the gallstones cause pain because they cause blockages in your
Right.
biliary
But
system,
the
right? So
stone is
that's where the
there.
pain.
Right.
So why would you have the same
How would it
pain?
even make the same symptoms?
Exactly.
What's
But
there to
they
block it? Is it just contracting? Are they saying it's spasming?
Yeah, mine is contracting inappropriate, like in the like basically from like 4 in the morning until like noon or so. It's just contracted. When we did an ultrasound, they couldn't find it because it's just
I
like that,
remember, yeah.
and then it relaxes like later. But it's getting to the point that it hurts after I eat, and so it hurts, but it doesn't hurt like I have a blockage. It's just a completely other, and I don't there's
Achy, right? Like it's processing stuff. It's like,
it
ugh.
feels like there's something in there trying to eat its way out of me. Like, did you ever watch The Max? Um,
No.
there's like I'll send you a link later, but there's these little characters, and that's what I like visualize these
Okay.
little characters with little teeth. But and then I have these other weird symptoms that are what made me ask for the HIDA scan. The HIDA scan is they go in with like the new it's a nuclear test where they go in and visualize how the gallbladder and the biliary system is actually functioning. And so they can actually see the ejection rate of the bile. And that is the first test in a decade that came back abnormal for my GI stuff. All of my tests have always been normal. And so when I had it comes back 95%, right? Which in normal is something like 35 to 60.
Oh,
Um,
what?
so, and they go, oh, it can't be that. And I think the reason why they say that is because I can feel things in my body in a way that most people can't. So, the reason why I asked for that test is I was having this sensation of like a volcano ejecting from my right side and going basically through my small intestine. And I was like, what could cause that? And I started like reading about gallbladder issues, and I discovered this test that they've never offered me. And I said, can I have the test? And they said, no, we'll do an ultrasound instead. And then I did the ultrasound, then I did an MRI, and I said, now can we do the fucking test I asked for? And they went, sure. It came back abnormal. And they went, we've never had a patient that needs to have surgery with that. And I'm like, but there's not a lot of papers, but the few papers that are out there, 80% of
What is the
80% have a
damage
decrease.
about taking the goddamn gallbladder out of your body? Obviously, it's problematic. If it's
Right.
causing pain, get rid of it.
Yeah, and I've been having
You
when
already
I
have to
went,
modify your diet anyway.
yeah, it's been like forever I've been on, and I didn't even,
You know you're
and
gonna
they
have
were
to
like, oh,
factor it out. Let's go. Let's
yeah.
do it.
And that's why I told him, I said, if we remove it, we remove that layer, then we see what's left. And I understand that remove the gallbladder, sometimes you have other issues,
Right.
but those are managed with medication. What I'm experiencing right now is not. So, let's just do it and get it over with
Yeah.
and see. And I'm scared
Well, is
about
it being too logical about what
I don't like maybe I needed to cry or something. I don't know. Like
they don't
I
like
told
crying.
yeah,
They
I told my doctor I was like I don't know how to say things to be heard because like when I had that sensor in my esophagus and my esophagus was like what the fuck is this? I had all this pain and they had told me in the procedure room that if I had that pain, they could remove it. And then I kept calling and being like I'm in pain. They're like, "Well, call us when it's a 10 out of 10." I'm like, what you I don't know how you
the
talk to
numbers
one
scale
person.
thing. Like
Yeah, I don't know how to navigate when they tell me one thing about how to manage the pain, and then when the pain happens, they never do the thing they said. And I'm like, I
I what I
how?
want to know is why is it okay to be in 8 out of 10 pain?
Right.
Like
With a
why do
test
you have
that's
to
not supposed to hurt. It's
also that?
I'm like, I don't understand. And they're like, and when she emailed me after the fact, she went, well, you could have just gone to the ER. I'm like, but you told me, and I went, this is probably my autism playing into it,
Yeah.
but you told me to call in this situation. You didn't tell me to go in.
See, and this is like a barrier to care that like
Right.
neurodivergent people or even just
Anybody that
getting
listens.
actual getting actual helpful information.
Right. And then I've been turned away from the ER multiple times. So I have trauma from that where they won't help me.
because I wasn't dying, but I didn't know what was wrong with me. And then my doctors weren't helping me. So I went to where they had tests and they were like, oh, it's probably anxiety, and sent me away. But I didn't have anxiety. So I did after that. But,
If
so
you
I'm like,
didn't, you do now.
yeah. So I'm like, I'm not going to just go to the ER. When I had a surgery on my backside for my butt, and I didn't know about the EDS, and I ended up having one of the complications that's seen in EDS patients, which is that I had severe bleeding.
Thank you for listening. Join me next week for the continuation of this conversation. Want to support my creative chaos and get access to exclusive content? Check out my Patreon. Have a great week.